Oh, howdy all, grab yourselves a beer. It is time for a little bit of fun, wrapping up ExileCon, which was a fantastic weekend away. And what I wanted to do is showcase some of the IRL loot that I was able to pick up from the convention, including this Toucan shirt. Now, I'd printed this Toucan shirt myself, but I managed to get it autographed by the three directors of Grinding Gear Games. So there is Jonathan Rogers, technical director, there is Eric Olfson, the creative director, and of course there is Chris Wilson himself. So next time that you're told that toucans are not allowed, well, here's some evidence that they're approved by GGG bosses. And don't use this as justification in the event that you wind up getting muted for 600 hours of posting one in global chat. Had a bit of fun getting their signatures on this. Next up, someone actually, I didn't prepare this, and nor was this part of the Path of Exile card game that was going on there, but someone had printed off a bunch of the divination cards that were at a higher value in trade leagues or that were considered somewhat iconic. And this person recognized me on the first day when we were lining up to sign up for the convention, and gave me a printout of the divination card because they recognized that I'd submitted the price of loyalty. And so this was a physical printout of the divination card, not from Running Gear Games themselves, but from someone else. And of course, I then went and got Chris Wilson's signature on that. That was a little bit of fun. Don't ever let it be said that Grinding Gear Games aren't in the RMT industry. This is an Exalted Orb foam stress ball, which they were selling for 20 New Zealand dollars. This is a 3D printed Chaos Orb, which was given to me by someone else at the convention. They'd done it. That wasn't a GGG product, but the Exalted Orb foam stress ball is, and they are pretty tough to squeeze. I'm used to stress balls being ones that compact to nothing, just with a small amount of force, but these are pretty resilient. And next up we have the Path of Exile card game, and I wanted to just give you a bit of a sense of what was involved in it. But basically, have a look here at this full plate of Vigor. This started out its life as a white full plate. It has then had a transmutation orb applied to it, orb of transmutation, at the crafting bench. So you would take up to the crafting bench, you would take your item, your white base, and you would take your currency item, and you would then give them both to a GGG employee. They would then go to an armor sort of sticker pool that they had, and they would pick out a mod that would then be affixed to the item. And so that's been a full plate that's then been transmuted into an armor of Vigor. I have then gone and used this to fight monsters, as you can see from its durability, and it is fucked up beyond all repair. Once an item takes 2 damage, it is completely destroyed and is no longer able to be used at all. Now, to give a bit of a sense of how this card game worked, you would have a number of stats, and your full plate, or your plate armor, or whatever torso armor you were using, the start of the game, it would always be a full plate that you were given, I believe. And then later in the game, you would get items that would provide, there was sort of more of your energy shield bases. So early on, you might get a full plate which has 2 units of defense, and this was the symbol for life. Later on, you could get an item that had 5 defensive symbols on it, and they'd be the premium crafting bases. And then you could then go and enchant it. When you transmuted an item, it would usually get 1, sometimes get 2 additional stats on it, so getting Vigor on this was a lucky roll. When you elked an item, it would then usually end up with 3 and sometimes with 4 mods. Armor was, generally speaking, one of the more common reward types. Amulets were uncommon, and rings were rare, and you wanted 2 rings. Basically what would happen is when you saw a GGG employee going around the convention, they would be wearing a t-shirt. Some of them would have an NPC t-shirt, so they might be Jun. If they're Jun, then you couldn't interact with them in this game. They just weren't part of the game. They had some responsibility for keeping the convention itself running, and so they weren't able to interact with you. But if they were wearing another t-shirt that represented a monster from in-game, such as a Devourer or Malachi or Kitava or the Guardian of the Chimera, then you could go up to them and challenge them. Their t-shirt would tell you what you needed to beat them. They would have a certain number of elements that they would deal as damage, And this would be presented in a format that might be something like five, so the number 5 in a circle, followed by 2 ice symbols, followed by 1 fire symbol. If that was the damage they were dealing to you, you would need armor that had a total of 8 symbols on it, and at least 2 of them would need to be ice, and 1 of them would need to be fire. The way that we think of this is you'd need 2 units of cold resist, 1 of fire resistance, and 5 of anything. That anything could be life, it could be armor, it could be more cold resistance. This is your block units. And there were also these wild symbols like the Aegis Aurora has that could be used for anything. Now, once you could use your full plate plus your shield, or not your full plate, your torso armor plus your shield if you were using one to defend against the monster's attacks. You would then also attack their defenses using your weapon stats. So if we have a look here at, I think the only... Do I have a normal... No, I don't seem to have a normal weapon. I've only got the Soul Taker. And it has special rules as well. But the Soul Taker is a one-hander, which you can tell by the fact that it's got only one of these symbols here. So first symbol is your main hand, second symbol is your offhand, third is armor, fourth is amulet, fifth is ring. You would compare the Soul Taker's stats against the monsters. That wouldn't be enough once the monsters got tougher. Once they got tougher, you would need to use amulets and rings as well. Amulets and rings, you could choose whether they lended their stats to your weapon or whether they lended their stats to your defense. And you needed to both match every symbol in the enemy's defense with what you were attacking them with, and have enough raw symbols altogether in order to be able to penetrate the enemy's defenses. But then on top of that, you also needed to have enough on your other items to tank the enemy's counterattacks. And this game was a bit of fun. I don't think there was any real lasting replayability to it, but it was a lot of fun while it lasted. And I think we all had a lot of fun trying to either assemble a Shaper set and then challenge Chris Wilson, who was the Shaper, or assemble enough gear to take on the Elder, which was of course Jonathan, the technical director of GGG, or the 3.9 boss, which was one of the other GGG bigwigs. Lots of fun that was had there in this game. And the cards that you had, what happened with durability was a big thing. This transformed the game. Essentially, your items were they were damaged every time you fought monsters. Monsters would have an AI script that would instruct them as to a set of rules in which would determine what items of yours they would damage. So for instance, a number of the enemies would prioritize damaging your amulet if you were wearing one. Some others would prioritize damaging the highest rarity item that you attacked with. So for instance, if you presented Soul Taker, Aegis Aurora, this full plate, and this Lapis Amulet, then that enemy would damage one of Soul Taker and Aegis Aurora. Others would be more merciful and might just go for your shield if you have one. And when you were fighting maps, which maps were another feature in the game entirely, they would also have some specific modifiers that would affect the amount of damage that they would do. This created a really interesting economy in the game, where you had lots and lots of crafting currency, but not enough bases for a lot of purposes. So for example, I found that for a whole period, I was stranded in a position where I could not get enough just basic torso armor to be able to present one when I was fighting monsters. I had torso armor, but it was getting destroyed faster than I was getting new ones of it. And a lot of players that were fighting low-level monsters were having to aggressively trade for cast-off plate armor like this one here. This full plate of Vigor I actually traded for. I didn't transmute this myself. I traded for this because I was so desperate to get some sort of torso armor that I was willing to accept anything. My fortunes changed when I killed Brutus and was rewarded with a Maroi Equi, which has 11 physical damage and 2 fire damage as its attack. This meant that I could kill almost every boss within the axe, including it was enough to kill Kitava. And all I needed to do was focus on providing enough defense to tank their attacks. And then I got this Marble Amulet here, traded it from another player who was desperate for Alchemy Orbs at the time. I had a couple of Alchemy Orbs, I'd been a bit lucky, so I traded for them, picked up this Marble Amulet, went and threw another one of my Alchemy Orbs on it, and then I was able to get myself going, and then when I killed Kitava, I picked up this Chiron's Wrappings. This helped me kill the Guardian of the Chimera and do several maps before, unfortunately, it was killed. The way that maps worked was that you would you would queue up to a GGG employee who was playing, basically, I guess you could say that they were playing Zana, and they would have a deck of cards that represented Tier 1 monsters, Tier 2, Tier 3, Tier 4, and Tier 5. If you presented a Tier 1 map, then they would attack you firstly with a Tier 1 monster, and if you were able to beat that, they'd present a Tier 2, and if you were able to beat that, they'd present a Tier 3 monster. And then you'd be awarded loot. If you were able to beat all three of them, you'd be awarded quite a considerable amount of loot. You then had the same experience with Tier 2 maps, except they would start with a Tier 2 monster, a Tier 3, and a Tier 4. And if you presented a Tier 3 map, which I didn't get around to doing, then you would be attacked by a Tier 3 monster, a Tier 4 monster, and a Tier 5 monster, but you would get the best loot of all. When you completed the map, you would get one extra piece of loot for completing the map, plus an extra 1 if the map was magic, and an extra 2 if the map had been rare. And you'll see here from looking at this rare map that first monster deals double gear damage, and you need 4 lightning defense. That made the Tier 3 maps considerably harder, or at least so, that made rare maps considerably harder. In terms of other things that came up, you would be able to transmute your maps, of course. This isn't the greatest of photos in the world, this is probably clearer, but you'll see monsters get +1 defense, and that was a transmuted mod. So again, I just went up to a GGG employee, gave them the transmutation orb and the Tier 1 map, and they gave me that. Anyways, that's a quick little tour of the IRL loot that I picked up from ExileCon. However, more exciting than the IRL loot was getting to meet a bunch of people that I know, both from this channel and also other Path of Exile content creators. I got to speak to Slippery Jim 8, who's a great guy, and we sort of tentatively discussed having some sort of collaboration video in the future on the effect of Sanctified Fossils, which, because I've been lazy this week, I haven't chased him up on. And then there's also a bunch of other people that I got to meet. I got to see popular streamer Zizaran, and I also got to see him quite literally get shat on by a bird, which he found, which was obviously immediately annoying, but he then just started joking about streamer RNG, which brought everyone, got everyone laughing and sort of made his misfortune into a moment that made us all realize how he's a great guy and really funny. I got to very quickly speak to Ziggy D and a number of other people, and really, in a lot of ways, that's the best part of a convention like ExileCon. Lastly, I also got this cool blank misprinted. This is one of the Path of Exile trading card game cards, but it is a misprint that is pure black, and I'm pretty happy with that. I'm going to keep that one. Quite like it. Anyways, that's all I got from ExileCon. Lots of fun. Highly recommend going to the next one. I assume there will be a next one because it was such a success. If you've got any comments or questions, definitely fire away below.